Shalom Mishpachah. Welcome to another video from GoyaGroup.com, where we strive to bring everyone into one accord in the worship of Yahweh Elohim in spirit and in truth. Our channel focuses on removing religious lies to reveal simple spiritual truth, so that everyone is armed with the knowledge and understanding on how to faithfully follow the will of the Most High. As always, we will be using Hashem, or the name of the Father, to bring honor to the Creator and exalt His name as is commanded in the Scriptures. Since all of the lies of religion and the corruption of the text are so rampant today, this video series will be a smaller version of the material that we previously recorded and covered in our other videos, and prayerfully will be easier for people to digest. This series will focus on verses that are often misunderstood or misused. The 66-book Catholic or Christian Bible has plenty of verses that are obviously mishandled by people, but there are many other verses that are mistranslated or flat-out insertions within the text. This series will focus on the misunderstanding or misuse of verses in the Bible that could cause salvation issues according to Yasha'al or the ancient Israelites, and therefore they must be addressed. To anyone new to the channel, please understand that we absolutely believe in the Most High and His commands, which include His Mashiach or Messiah from the 1st century CE in Palestine. We do not, however, ascribe to the religions created based on the faith system of the people from that time who were persecuted and eventually exiled by the Roman Empire. That being said, our first installment of the series will be about the Bible being a perfect vessel, or the perfect word of Yah, spoken directly to the prophets, who then copied these words directly into books, which were then compiled directly into a single manuscript and then disseminated to the masses without fail over thousands of years. There are actually quite a few verses that are often misunderstood or misused that many people view as a justification of this belief of a perfect text, but they have all the same general theme that the Bible is perfect and unchanged like the Creator Himself. We will start the examples off from the least valid and lesser known or used verses to the more known and credible verses used to support this. And, as is a key of this channel, we will provide historical context for maximum clarity, or as clear as it can be for us today. First up the bat, Devarim 30:10, or Deuteronomy 30:10. If you obey Yahweh your Elohim and keep His commands and decrees that are written in this book of the law, and turn to Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul. Next up, Joshua 1:8, or Joshua 1:8. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it night and day, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Now, there are many more verses that are not listed here that fall into this vein, and while they may be mostly different from one another, they are all misused with the same theme that the book has been with the chosen people, and by extension with mankind forever, and was kept for thousands of years intact because it was kept on the hearts and minds of the masses. Simply placing these texts into historical context first and then examining other verses from the Bible easily dispels this usage. The book of Devarim, or Deuteronomy, as well as the book of Joshua, or Joshua, were both manuscripts from the First Temple period, which detailed the events that happened after the exodus of the ancient Israelites from the land of Kemet, which is simply known as Egypt today. They refer to the law or instructions that were given to the masses by Musa, or Moses, who was considered the lawgiver to his people. These were instructions for them as they lived in the land promised to them by their power or deity, so that they would be safe and prosper while in that land. This period occurred during the Middle Kingdom of Egypt, which was from about 1975 BCE to 1640 BCE, or before the Common Era. These verses are not claiming that the entire Bible is perfect or without insertions or deletions, but were referencing the covenant given at Sinai. This was specifically about the law or Torah, which actually just means instructions that was used as a guide for the life and governance among this people. This next verse is a bit stronger doctrinally than the others like it, simply because it actually seems as if the Most High himself is claiming to be present in the entire Bible, and therefore it must be perfect as he is perfect. Tahor, or Psalm 47. Then said I, Lo, I come in the volume of the book, it is written of me. This verse is from the book of Psalms, which is a collection of writings that probably were created over the course of about 500 years. The traditional view of modern scholarship is that the book of Psalms is a collection of works that were redacted and placed into a single manuscript or writing going back no earlier than about the 5th century BCE or the 600s before the Common Era. That being said, most people who believe the Bible is a perfect work won't care about what most scholars think, but a simple examination of the text itself, as well as placing it into its own context, would reveal the truth of the verse. This verse was actually recording the words of the author of the writing, that the text itself identifies as Dawood or David, who was speaking in the first person, and just reading the text reveals this. The first verse of the chapter reads, I waited patiently for Yahweh, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry. If you look at it, it's very clear that the author is the one speaking in the first person, and he is speaking about Yah. Just reading the following verse 8 further emphasizes this point. I delight to do thy will, O my Elohim. Yeah, thy law is within my heart. Like the earlier verses we looked into, this is about the law or Torah given at Sinai. The individual who claimed to come in the volume of the book was not the creator according to the text itself, but was rather the author of the psalm, who was universally understood to be Dawood based on the end of the prayers recorded later in the book. Tahor 72:20. The prayers of Dawood, the son of Yishai, are ended. The text identifies this as a prayer of Dawood that eventually ended in chapter 72. Therefore, this verse never claims that the Father is in the volume or the entire book. The historical context is the primary reason why these misunderstood or misused verses are weak examples that are invalid for the use of the doctrine of a perfect Bible or law of the Creator passed down throughout history until today. King Dawood is widely accepted to have ruled from about 1010 to 970 BCE and is a proven historical figure from about the year 1000 through the archaeological record. If this verse or the ones we just looked at that were from an earlier period were actually trying to convey that the entire Bible was a pristine document directly from the Creator, then that would mean that all the books after this time period, which include all the books of the Bible from Kings until the end of the last book, cannot be considered as the volume of the book, because the book did not include those writings at the time of this prophecy. They all came long after these verses and mean that people are misusing or misunderstanding the meaning of these verses, and the Bible never claims to be a perfect writing or the direct word of the Creator. You only need to continue reading the Bible in historical context to see this obvious fact. Yirmiah or Jeremiah 8:8. But my people do not know the requirements of Yahweh. How can you say we are wise, for we have the law of Yahweh, when actually the lying pen of the scribes has handled it falsely? The prophet Yirmiah or Jeremiah was a First Temple period prophet that is widely accepted by scholars to have lived from about 650 to 570 BCE. This makes this passage that was written by him to being penned nearly 500 years after the death of King Dawood. In historical and biblical context, this means Half a millennia later, the Torah, or the law that was being praised as the top subject of all these verses that many people use to claim that the Bible is the perfect word of the Creator, was actually recorded in the Bible as being imperfect due to the lying scribes and others who copied them down over the 500 years since the time of Dawood, which was another 500 years before the time of the Messiah. The Bible itself states clearly that this is not a perfect work. A much bigger hole in the perfect book doctrine is the fact that the books were all destroyed when the first temple was destroyed when the Chaldeans invaded on behalf of the Babylonians. Tobi'Yahu Beit, or 2 Chronicles 36:19. And they, meaning the Chaldees, burnt the house of Elohim and broke down the wall of Jerusalem and burnt all the palaces thereof with fire, and destroyed all the goodly vessels thereof. This destruction and burning included the temple as well as all of the things that were in the temple, which included the books of the law kept by the priesthood. It is ridiculous to believe that everything was destroyed and burned, but somehow the books managed to survive. Even if someone wanted to believe that the Creator preserved the books, which is totally within the power of the Creator, this does not work either when you go deeper into your studies and read the apocryphal books that were removed by the church because far more details are given. Depending on your translation, this will be either 2nd Esdras or 3rd Esdras. Chapter 4, verse 45 of the Apocrypha. Thou also hast vowed to build up the temple, which the Edomites burned, when Yehudah was made desolate by the Chaldees. The Idumeans, or the Edomites, were the ones who actually burned the temple down, and the Chaldees were merely the ones who breached the walls. Once the first temple was destroyed and all the writings were burned, they had to be rewritten for the masses, which was probably not a perfect copy of the first temple books that were destroyed, but let's say it was for the sake of argument. The one who did this was Esdras or Ezra, and was recorded as being the one most capable of accomplishing this. 2 Esdras 8:7. For Esdras had very great skill, so that he omitted nothing of the law and commandments of Yahweh, but taught all Yashar'al the ordinances and judgments. The understanding of the law and judgments of the Most High were copied again by Ezra after the first temple was destroyed, because the original books were all destroyed, which the texts state plainly. Now again, depending on your translation or version of Esdras you're using, this will either be 3rd or 4th Esdras, chapter 14, verses 21 to 22 of the Apocrypha. It reads, For your Torah is burnt. Therefore, no man knows the things that are done by you, or the work that shall begin. But if I have found grace before you, send Ruach HaKadosh into me, and I shall write all that has been done in the world since the beginning, which were written in your Torah, that men may find your path, and those that will live in the latter days may live. So Ezra gathers a group of writers, and it took over a month for them to record everything. In 40 days, they wrote 204 books. According to the text, the entire Old Testament, up to the point that the temple was destroyed, was rewritten by Ezra after the destruction of the first temple and the burning of the original books of the Torah. They wrote over 200 books, yet we only have 39 books of canon and an additional 14 of the apocryphal writings available to us today. Even if you include Jubilees and Jasher, this still only gives a total of 55 books out of the 204. And that is just what is missing from the Old Testament. For the purpose of historical context, please bear in mind that the apocryphal writings were originally a part of the Bible, which was finally compiled in English during the 16th through 17th centuries CE, or the mid-1500s to the early 1600s. The Apocrypha was only removed in 1885, which is the late 19th century CE. So, Just before the 20th century, these books were removed even though they were accepted for nearly 2,000 years. For some reason, they were deemed to be non-canonical by the church less than 150 years ago. The best claim for this doctrine of a perfect book handed down over the ages is only slightly better than all the others we just reviewed, and this is only because it was written after the Bible records these false pens of the scribes making the law of no effect and the ultimate destruction of the writings overall. These verses are in the New Testament of the Bible, written by one of the 12 of HaMashiach more than 500 years after the time of Jeremiah and the destruction of the first temple. Chazon, or Revelation 22:18 through 19. We read, I warn everyone who hears the words of the prophecy of this scroll, if anyone adds anything to them, Elohim will add to that person the plagues described in this scroll. And if anyone takes words away from this scroll of prophecy, Elohim will take away from that person any share of the tree of life in the Kadosh city, which are described in this scroll. These verses practically debunk themselves for the use of a perfect Bible doctrine, even without historical context. But for the sake of historical context, this book is the last written document added to the 66-book canon Bible. It is widely accepted by scholars that this book was composed by Yochanan or John, the son of Zebedee, which was the youngest of the Shilachim, or 12 apostles of the Messiah. It includes information from the reign of the Roman Emperor Nero, which was from 54 to 68 CE, and the latter part of Domitian's reign from 81 to 96 CE. Traditional scholarship dates the book to 95 CE, with a small percentage dating it to during the reign of Vespasian from 69 to 79 CE. The book was authored well after the death of HaMashiach and the vast majority of his followers, who were persecuted by the Romans and eventually were forced to hide among the Arab Nabateans for protection. Regardless of the date you settle on, the fact is that these verses in no way claim that any version or any book of the Bible is perfect, but is just focusing on the particular scroll authored by Yochanan while he was serving time on the Isle of Patmos. The verses literally state this itself when it says, if anyone takes the words away from this scroll of prophecy. And he reiterates this in the very next verse with the phrase, in this scroll. The thinking that because the author warns people not to change his specific prophetic scroll has to mean that the book has to be perfect, and even the entire Bible as well, because Yah commanded no one to alter this one scroll, makes no sense in the context of the verse or history, because there are many things commanded by the Creator in the Bible that were ignored by mankind and especially by his chosen people. The fact is, the Bible never claims to be a perfect work or the direct word of the Creator passed down over the generations. That is religion that cannot be supported by the very book that many people worship with the same reverence as their Creator, which is what makes this a salvation issue. If you give the book the same authority as your Creator, then you have made the book your mighty one or deity. This can be very problematic when you have to deal with insertions or mistranslations of the text, because people will give up their free will, which is given by the Creator, and ignore anything that is obviously in error just to hold on to what they believe. Again, we're not telling anyone not to read their Bibles, just to read it with open eyes, open hearts, and most importantly, use your free will to judge what is true based on truth and not on religion. Prayerfully, we provided the knowledge and context so the next time someone misuses or misquotes any of these verses or any like them, you will be able to see it for what it is. As always, feel free to comment in the message board. Shalom.